Ladies and gentlemen, yes, it's once again budget day. Yes, it's coming in July because there has been, incidentally, a union election that has taken place between the time that Nirmala Sitharaman last spoke before all of us in Parliament and her speech today. A lot of political water has flowed under the bridge. We have a stable government, and for the first time in my lifetime, that a Prime Minister has taken office for a third consecutive term. Does that mean that the government at the center now goes for broke and says, you know what, guys, we're going to bite the bullet across the board? Or do they digest the feedback mechanism that an election provides and go, hang on, we need to do a bit of course correction? Does it make the government, which completely shunned any taxation populism just a few months ago, think about it, maybe this time we can go for it? Yes, there are certain things that the finance ministers historically avoid during the concept of an interim budget. It is not the law, but it is the norm. That does mean that Nirmala Sitharaman, now presenting a full budget, is back in a situation where she can not have to worry about elections coming up in a couple of months. They are coming up in states, but not at the union. Let me open up this conversation. Jayajit Bhattacharya joining us on the broadcast this morning. General G. Dwivedi is with us also. Patikrit joining us this morning. Sameer Gogia, who is the Executive Director of Deloitte, will be with us very, very shortly. I am also expecting Vijay Kalantari joining us. He is the President of the All India Industries Association. I am also expecting Rahul Garg, who is the Direct Taxation Chairman of the ASSOCHAM committee, to be joining us very, very shortly as well. So let's open this up with Jayajit. Jayajit, now we have a themology, the government had a themology, Nirmala Sitharaman had a themology a few months ago, and that themology was youth, women, farmers and the poor. There are certain things you and I can be very confident of, that this budget is going to put out the outlays for the saturation of all the government schemes that they've been working on for the past decade. So that's a tick. What else, Jayajit?
I think one of the good points right now as the government enters into this budget is that the fiscal headspace has increased significantly. The tax collections are growing on a large base, and that's a healthy sign. Among all the focus areas that they had in February, I think agriculture will find a significantly more focus in this budget for multiple reasons. For the reasons that, of course, there is a political change that has happened. There are state elections going to come in. But also because agriculture truly needs more focus, not just from the perspective of the farmers, but also from the perspective of climate change. So I hope that focus is brought in, and agriculture in all its facets, not just agriculture from the soil, but also factory-based production, food processing, and so on and so forth. Also, there are areas which needs urgent focus as we move into the July of this year. Technology being one such area. The focus has been on quantum, but nothing much has happened on the ground in a significant manner. And I think that is important, not just from a technology perspective, but from a defense perspective also. From an energy security perspective, we are still 70% dependent on coal. And although we do have coal in the ground, we don't have enough ammonium nitrate, which is needed to blast the coal out. And that's the only chemical that's used to blast it out. We are still importing it, and we need to create the environment so that more domestic capacity comes up for ammonium nitrate to achieve energy security. Similarly, we have been hunting for critical minerals, but while we are doing so, there is an inverted duty structure hitting that sector. In fact, there is inverted duty structure hitting many sectors of this economy, and which is preventing more Atmanirbharta coming up. So I hope that there is, a very, very significant steps taken up in inverted duty structure and rectification of the same. For example, things like molybdenum oxide, which is important for ferromolybdenum, which is a critical mineral-based steel. Molybdenum oxide is being imported at a 2.5% tariff, while Korea is exporting the finished product ferromolybdenum at 0% tariff. And those are things which are biting our industry.
Okay.
I also hope that we are pushed from being a user of software to a net exporter of compute. I'll stop here for now and circle back.
Okay, net exporter of compute. I mean, Atmanirbharta and cloud will something we can hope for. Atmanirbharta in maps is something that we are seeing happening. We've all seen what's happened with Microsoft and Google very, very recently. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of technology, that was the finance minister displaying the technology in a lovely red colored, embossed with the national emblem of India cover for her tablet with which she now reads the speech. Long gone are the days inherited from the British of a briefcase in red. Also long gone are the days are the major steel trunks full of the budgetary documents to be presented to Parliament. All of those are electronically transferred. Let's open up this conversation. General Dwivedi, before I ask you the obvious questions on the biggest budget point, which is often defense, probably will be again. But as an individual, sir, who is both an army pensioner, but is a person, who is watching and training and mentoring young people, what are your priorities as a middle class person who's served this country for decades?
Well, we should first and foremost, we are in the mode of progress, development. So therefore, overall development of the country, I think, comes as a central point. But then we have to see which are the cardinals or which are the pillars on which the development comes. So in our case, I think the development for and foremost today, if we want to shift from the agriculture to the manufacturing or industrial economy, we need to make a big shift into the manufacturing. And that is, I think, the priority of the government, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Secondly, there is a major requirement of bringing in transformation in our agriculture because, almost 40% of our labor force in agriculture only contributing about 50% to the GDP. This narrative has to change. Thirdly, it is young people, who actually build the nation. And today, unemployment is a very serious issue among the graduates. And as you rightly mentioned, I do a lot of teaching in the number of business schools. Our undergrad, unemployment is almost 20%, and which is not a very healthy sign. And last but not the least, what we need to do is to open up our economy, bring in more private players into the whole game, because that's where we can, leverage the opportunities today. China plus one is a call that we need to take. And I think we need to simplify our procedures because still doing business is not very, positive indicator in the current environment, Rishabh.
Okay, so General Dwivedi, let me take that thought because I know you teach, okay? So let me take that thought. Now, I have a conundrum. I've been discussing it since morning, okay? I'm sure that conundrum applies to Jayjeet and it applies to others as well who are sitting with us this morning. The conundrum is that as we speak, I have jobs available. I want to hire people. Well, quite a number of them. But it's taking so many interviews because in my profession, I'm expecting decent language skills and decent general knowledge skills. That's about it, right? It's not a technical profession per se. But those skills are few and far between. I mean, whether you look, I take interviews from all over the country, from all universities, people who are well educated, have undergraduation degrees, post-graduation degrees. Most of them, I would say 9 out of 10, cannot even tell me what India's GDP is. And it makes me wonder then how do I bring them onto a team that's going to one day be discussing the budget? What has happened? How do we connect that gap, sir?
Well, Rishabh, I think we need to look at the education in a very holistic manner. Today, our education system is still, very, very vintage. It's not very progressive. And you rightly brought out because this is the issue I too face when I also sit on the selection boards, that we don't have the basic skill, what you mentioned, communication is a very important skill in today's environment. But most of our young people can't communicate. We require very innovative mental agility. Like in your profession today in the media, people have to have very good mental agility, very quick at the uptake, and they have to have the holistic knowledge. You can't be just only, fixed into the one frame. So therefore, I think the basic, we need to relook at the skills. What are the skills required in Industry Revolution 4.0? And communication, creativity, holistic knowledge. These are the skills that we are looking for. And unfortunately, there's a huge gap between the university institution and the last mile connectivity, as you rightly brought addition.
Okay. So if anybody, now here is, we are going to do something live on television. Okay, since I've got another hour and a half before the budget speech, and an opportunity, of course, to discuss direct taxation immediately after this. But I'm going to put it out there. This is live on TV. Okay, so if anybody who is applying for a job with us at NewsX, okay, these are the questions I ask in an interview. The first question is, what is India's GDP? The second question is, in which year was the Battle of Plassey fought? The third question is, who is the Chief Minister of Tripura? The fourth question is, who is the President of France? And the fifth question is, what's the first law of thermodynamics? These are all grade 6, 7 questions, okay? And I promise you, 9 out of 10 people who give these interviews know none of the answers, not some of the answers, none of the answers. But when I look at their CVs, they've all done excellently in their board exams. They've all done, been to decent universities and got BAs and MAs, but cannot answer a single one of these questions. And these are people who aspire to be journalists. They are voluntarily, I'm not forcing them to come into this industry. They want to be in this industry. It makes you think. So I have to draw an assumption. And here's another factoid of NewsX. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 6 years, we have 90% of our hiring is freshers. 90%. So 9 out of 10 employees who are being hired today are first timers. I take it upon myself to train people, will happily do it. But it is an assumption that has to be made that the first 6 months to 1 year is just going to be training. I'm going to have to teach you basic general knowledge. You'll have to understand what India's GDP is. The PM is always talking about it. We are always discussing $5 trillion economy, 5th largest, but nobody knows what that is. And after 1 year, maybe you'll be able to contribute, mentally contribute, physically contribute to the organization. Okay, so you've seen this. Now, I don't know who's going to be smart enough that next time they show up for an interview, they would have seen this clip and they would then know all the answers. I'm hoping that happens. Pathikrit, come in on this. It is such a fundamental issue, Pathikrit, because it is so real. There is a reality check in which we are caught between, where we can't seem to get our examination systems right because you have some NEET controversy and some other controversy which is wasting so much time and energy for lakhs of students. At the same time, we don't want kids to be stressed out because board exams and etc. were very stressful exercises. So now we have people who've got 95, 96% in English who can't speak basic or write basic grammar. We have a lot of these conundrums. These are very real conundrums because there are jobs out there. What do we do? Can we hear him? Okay, Pathikrit, apologies. I think we can't hear you. Maybe we'll reconnect your audio in just a bit. So let me then take that opportunity to pick up this conversation on the obvious other front. And the obvious other front, what you're watching for, because GST, nothing to do with the budget anymore. Reforms, not necessarily anything to do with the budget, but direct taxation, for sure it is. MJ Khan, chairman of the ICFA, joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Khan, is it going to happen? Are we going to see some incremental 30,000-40,000 rupee relief for a middle class in their taxation today?
I believe so because GST collections are good, economy is on the sound fundamentals. So therefore, little populist measures are possible, and factoring the inflation, I think what you have said is very much possible. We are looking forward to it. But my subject is food and agriculture, and I must say what Dr. Bhattacharya has outlined. I think we are very optimistic for what Finance Minister is going to present today. Is largely going to focus on agriculture.
Okay, and I'm going to come back to that. Rahul Garg, your thoughts? Is it, didn't do it in February, okay? It wouldn't have been the norm to do it in February, but there's no illegality in announcing direct taxation changes in an interim budget. But now it's a full budget. Why do it now?
So I think that particularly the middle class and the individuals and mass are mostly severely impacted by inflation rate. And therefore, if inflation is under control, by and large, people would be okay. On the other hand, if to give any sops, etc., the inflation goes out of control, that makes everybody miserable. So to me, it appears that the rates of taxation, except perhaps in the highest bracket for individuals, would not be changed, except that in the new tax regime, there are multiple slabs and there may be some rationalization of that. And bear in mind that we all say that tax collection is increasing, but we still don't have more than enough tax collection to actually invest in our infrastructure, invest in our support system for growing economy to become a developed nation, and also deepen our social security system. So I think there is much more collection of revenue needed by the government to actually propel the country at the same time to a higher growth, but providing social security to the needy.
Okay, everything that you're saying, the person who figures it out wins a Nobel Prize, okay, and Bharat Ratnas and you name it, okay. If you can figure it out, how do we have low inflation and high growth? How do we increase per capita income? How do we increase the taxation base? All the people who figure it out, there's a Nobel Prize for you right out there. And of course, India should be creating its own version of the Nobel Prize. Why would you give the credit to Alfred Nobel, who was infamous for blowing up things? So let me go back to Rahul Garg. Rahul ji, now inflation figures tell us that we are doing just fine at 5%. Everything is hunky-dory, is comfortable. Real life in urban centers tell us, no, it's becoming a bit expensive. Things going out to eat has become very expensive. I live in the national capital, sir. And it is inconceivable how much monies need to be spent just to step out in the evening and not even go to a fancy place. So is there a real inflation for us to worry about? Does it belie the numbers?
No, I agree with you that the number of the inflation needs to be more close to what in practice the inflation is, and it is not just a matter of data. And as was noted yesterday in the economic survey as well, that there is a headline inflation and there are inflation which varies state by state, and as you said, that may be varying city by city, and therefore targeted intervention in respect of that is important, as you say, so that people don't have a situation of the data of inflation being showing a number, but it still pinches them.
Okay, so it is a problem. So now the next issue, let me tackle this with you before I get the others back in, okay. You mentioned taxation in terms of a taxation base. In the end, is he still with us? Okay, there he is. In the end, sir, what do we do with the taxation base when, of course, a large percent of the country which is involved in the agrarian economy is as it is exempt from direct taxation, which is 50% gone right there. In the balance, there is a disincentivization to show income. Now, I know people, because there are benefits in the various categories for backward people, even though they're earning a decent wage, they don't want to show it because then they lose the incentives for schooling, for gas, for electricity. So they don't want to show a high income and don't want to pay taxes for that reason. So how can we ever possibly increase the taxation base?
So it is a very typical problem of any growing economy which is wanting to streamline and mature its tax system. So it is not the case that people haven't found the answer of this. As you said rightly, that the disincentive which comes with showing the higher income, if you have a mechanism of providing a safe lending to the people in a transparent manner, that is moderated to a large extent. Number two, in terms of the tax base being widened, if you are already using so much electronic data and so much investigative things which are non-intrusive, you would be able to get more into the tax net. Number three, which is most important, I want you to pay attention to this, that the businesses today, when they pay taxes, what do? They report paying taxes to the government. You and I don't even know which businesses pays how much taxes, right? But if you today look at the budget and you are wanting to say that infrastructure spend should increase from 11 lakhs crores to 15 lakhs crores, where would that come from? That would come from the taxes. Who would pay taxes? You and I would pay taxes. The businesses from whom we purchase the goods would pay taxes, right? But we don't care. If you are going to buy a fridge, would you care whether the fridge company is paying taxes fairly in India or not?
Okay, so I will qualify. I will qualify for people watching the broadcast what I just said. Okay, and you've heard the inputs then from Rahul ji. Now, in Delhi, for example, there is a category in education for the economically weaker section, EWS. Do you know what the income cap for that was in the national capital of Delhi? The income cap was less than 1 lakh rupees a year. So if you earn officially more than 1 lakh rupees per year in your family, you no longer qualify for the educational benefits and others that EWS categories get. Now the Delhi High Court has increased that, I'm told, to 2.5 lakhs. Okay, that's about 20,000 rupees a month. Now, on the other side of the thing, you have indirect taxation, which everybody pays. Everybody pays. Okay. And that is GST.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.